On the afternoon of September 8, 2023, hotel staff at the Burj Al Arab, Dubai's iconic seven-star hotel where rooms start at $2,000 per night, discovered a scene that would shatter one of the UAE's most prominent families. Inside the royal suite on the 25th floor, a room that costs $24,000 nightly and overlooks the Persian Gulf through floor-to-ceiling windows, 32-year-old Filipina nurse Rosa Marina Delgado lay dead in a marble bathtub filled with blood-tinted water. The bathroom told a story of violence disguised as accident. Scattered around the pristine white marble, broken champagne flutes, a knocked-over bottle of crystal $500, and most tellingly, a blood-stained abaya traditional Islamic dress draped over the towel rack, size small, clearly belonging to a woman. The medical examiner would later confirm what the scene suggested. Rosa had been forcibly drowned, held underwater until her lungs filled and her struggling stopped. On the bed lay documents that explained everything. A marriage certificate dated 3 weeks earlier, August 18, 2023, registering the Islamic marriage between Rosa Marina Delgado and Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid, a 58-year-old oil magnate worth $1.2 billion. The marriage had been conducted quietly, privately, without announcement to his children or extended family. Security footage would later reveal the killer's identity. Amira al-Rashid, the Sheikh's 28-year-old daughter, a London-educated business executive who'd built her own $40 million fortune managing luxury property investments. She'd entered the royal suite at 2:47 p.m. using a keycard obtained through family connections. She'd left at 4:18 p.m., changed into fresh clothes, her face composed but her hands trembling. Before we unravel this devastating story of family betrayal, cultural collision, and murderous rage, hit that subscribe button, because this case reveals dark truths about wealth, power, and what happens when tradition collides with forbidden love. The investigation would expose a secret romance spanning 2 years, a father's defiance of his daughter's expectations, and a question that haunts wealthy families everywhere. How much control do children believe they have over their parents' lives? And what happens when that control is threatened? The murder of Rosa Marina Delgado wasn't just a family tragedy. It represented the dangerous intersection of generational conflict, cultural expectations, and the specific vulnerabilities faced by Filipino women who marry into powerful Arab families. In Emirati culture, family hierarchy and patriarchal authority create complex dynamics. While fathers traditionally hold supreme authority over adult children, especially those who have achieved independent wealth, often wield significant influence over family decisions, particularly regarding marriages that affect inheritance, family reputation, and business succession. Sheikh Khalid's decision to marry Rosa without consulting his children violated unwritten but powerful social codes. In prominent Emirati families, marriages aren't purely personal. They're strategic alliances affecting business partnerships, social standing, and dynastic planning. A 58-year-old billionaire marrying a 32-year-old foreign nurse from a modest background represented not just personal choice, but family disruption. Drop a comment below. Should adult children have any say in their parents' romantic choices? Where does parental autonomy end and family obligation begin? The statistics paint a sobering picture of risk for Filipino women in the Gulf states. Over 800,000 Filipinos work in the UAE, with women comprising 65% of that workforce. Filipino-Arab marriages occur regularly, but they exist within precarious power structures. When these marriages threaten family interests, inheritance distribution, social status, business succession, the foreign wife becomes vulnerable in ways Western observers often fail to recognize. Between 2018 and 2024, at least 23 Filipino women married to or romantically involved with wealthy Gulf men died under suspicious circumstances, according to Philippine embassy records. Only 7 cases resulted in criminal convictions. The rest were classified as accidents, suicides, or death from natural causes, despite family members' suspicions. Rosa's case became high-profile because the killer wasn't an abusive husband. It was a daughter who viewed her father's new wife as an existential threat to family legacy, inheritance, and social standing. Rosa Marina Delgado was born on March 3, 1991, in Cebu City, Philippines, a bustling urban center in the Visayas region known for producing skilled healthcare workers who migrate globally. Her father, Ernesto Delgado, worked as a jeepney driver navigating Cebu's chaotic streets for 12-hour shifts, earning roughly 500 pesos, $9 daily. Her mother, Corazon, sold vegetables at the carbon market, adding another 300 pesos, $5.50 on good days. Despite economic constraints, Rosa's parents prioritized education with almost religious fervor. They understood that nursing degrees were passports to overseas employment and financial stability their generation never achieved. Rosa attended Cebu Normal University on partial scholarship, working weekend shifts at a fast food restaurant to cover books, uniforms, and transportation. She graduated third in her nursing class in 2013, passed the Philippine Nursing Board exam on her first attempt, a significant achievement. The pass rate hovers around 45%, and immediately began the process overseas Filipino workers, OFWs, know intimately. Applications, agency fees, documentation, medical exams, skills assessments. If you're feeling inspired by Rosa's determination, smash that like button, because her story represents millions of Filipino workers who sacrifice everything for family. In March 2014, at age 23, Rosa accepted a position at Sheikh Rashid Hospital in Dubai, one of the UAE's premier public healthcare facilities. Her starting salary, $2,800 monthly, nearly 10 times what she could earn in Philippine hospitals. She sent $1,800 home monthly, keeping $1,000 for rent, food, and minimal personal expenses. For 8 years, Rosa lived the typical OFW existence: work, remittances, video calls with family, annual 2-week visits home, and the constant postponement of personal dreams. She shared a 2-bedroom apartment in Dara with 3 other Filipino nurses, sleeping on a mattress in the living room. She worked 12-hour shifts in the cardiac intensive care unit, dealing with life-and-death situations daily while missing birthdays, holidays, and milestones back home. Rosa's personality, according to friends and colleagues, blended competence with genuine warmth. She was the nurse who stayed late explaining medication regimens to confused families, who learned basic Arabic to comfort elderly patients, who organized potluck dinners for homesick Filipino staff. She dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Filipino women working in the Gulf navigate complex social terrain where relationships with Arab men carry risks, power imbalances, cultural differences, potential exploitation. And relationships with Filipino men are complicated by competing financial obligations and migration patterns. Rosa's life was comfortable but not exceptional, stable but not exciting. She was 30 years old in 2021, professionally successful, financially responsible, and emotionally unfulfilled. And then she met Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid. Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid came from old Dubai money, the kind of generational wealth that predated the oil boom and multiplied exponentially through strategic real estate holdings, oil industry investments, and government contracts. His grandfather had been a pearl merchant in the 1940s. His father transformed that modest fortune into billions through early investments in Dubai's construction boom. By 2021, at age 56, Khalid controlled a business empire spanning oil and gas interests, minority stakes in 3 major regional extraction companies, commercial real estate ownership or partial ownership of 40-plus buildings across Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and luxury hospitality investments, 4 5-star hotels. His personal net worth, $1.2 billion. But wealth hadn't bought happiness. Khalid's first wife, Fatima, had died in 2019 from ovarian cancer after a brutal 2-year battle. They'd been married for 32 years, an arranged union that had evolved into genuine partnership and affection. Her death devastated Khalid in ways his children never fully understood. Fatima and Khalid had 3 children: Amira, 28 in 2021, Omar, 26, and Layla, 24. All 3 were educated in London, professionally successful and deeply protective of their mother's memory and their family's social standing. Subscribe if you already sense where this is heading, because family dynamics in wealthy households follow predictable and dangerous patterns. After Fatima's death, Khalid withdrew from public life for nearly a year. His children expected eventual remarriage, culturally normal and practically understood for a widowed man of his status. But they assumed any new wife would be carefully selected, an appropriate Emirati woman from a respected family, someone who understood her role, someone who wouldn't disrupt established family dynamics or threaten inheritance arrangements. What they didn't expect was their father falling genuinely in love for the first time in his adult life. Khalid met Rosa in November 2021 when he was hospitalized at Sheikh Rashid Hospital for what turned out to be a minor heart arrhythmia, scary enough to warrant overnight observation, but ultimately manageable with medication. Rosa was his night shift nurse during the 48-hour stay. Their initial connection was simple. Khalid, grieving and lonely, found comfort in Rosa's genuine warmth and competent care. Rosa, accustomed to viewing wealthy patients as temporary responsibilities, was surprised by Khalid's courtesy, his thoughtful questions about her life, his genuine interest in her family back home. When Khalid was discharged, he did something unusual. He requested Rosa's contact information through the hospital's patient feedback system, technically allowed for testimonial purposes. He sent a thank you message. She responded politely. He asked if she might accept a lunch invitation to discuss healthcare excellence initiatives he was exploring for his company. Rosa knew this wasn't really about healthcare initiatives, but she agreed to lunch. Comment below, was Rosa naive or calculated? Can we judge her motivations without walking in her shoes? Over the next 6 months, their relationship developed slowly, almost cautiously. Khalid courted Rosa in ways she'd never experienced, respectfully, patiently, treating her as an intellectual equal rather than a commodity. They discussed literature, politics, their very different childhoods. Khalid learned about Rosa's family struggles. Rosa learned about Khalid's grief and loneliness. Khalid wasn't looking for a trophy wife or a caretaker. At 57, financially secure and socially established, he wanted genuine companionship. Rosa represented something his arranged first marriage hadn't provided in its early years: choice, chemistry, intellectual connection. By May 2022, their relationship had become romantic. They were discreet, meeting privately, avoiding public venues where Khalid might be recognized, understanding the social complications. Rosa's friends knew she was seeing someone but not his identity. Khalid told no one, especially not his children. The relationship violated social expectations in multiple ways. The 25-year age gap, the vast wealth disparity, the employer class versus worker class dynamics, the Emirati-Filipino cultural divide, and most problematically, the fact that Khalid's children expected to be consulted about any remarriage plans. But Khalid was exhausted by obligations. His first marriage had been arranged. His business partnerships were strategic. His social relationships were performative. With Rosa, he could simply be himself, a lonely widower who'd found unexpected connection. In July 2023, he proposed. Not with a $5 million ring or public spectacle, but privately, sincerely, promising to navigate the family and social complications together. Rosa said yes, and in doing so signed both their fate and her death warrant. Amira al-Rashid, Sheikh Khalid's eldest child and only daughter, was born into privilege so absolute it distorted her understanding of limits, boundaries, and other people's autonomy. From childhood, she'd been told she was exceptional, more intelligent, more beautiful, more deserving than ordinary people. But Amira wasn't simply a spoiled rich girl. She'd earned a first-class degree in business administration from London School of Economics, returned to Dubai, and built her own property investment firm managing luxury real estate portfolios for ultra-high-net-worth clients. By age 28, her personal net worth exceeded $40 million, impressive even by Dubai standards, and especially notable for a woman in a male-dominated industry. Amira's relationship with her father was complex, intensely close, and ultimately pathological. After her mother's death in 2019, Amira positioned herself as her father's primary emotional support, confidant, and family representative. She accompanied him to business dinners, managed household staff, oversaw family social obligations, and essentially functioned as a surrogate spouse in all non-romantic capacities. Psychologists would later describe Amira's attachment to her father as enmeshment with possessive characteristics, an inability to recognize appropriate boundaries between her identity and his, combined with a sense of ownership over his emotional life and future decisions. Hit that like button if you're seeing the red flags, because Amira's psychology is a masterclass in how wealth enables dysfunction. Amira had her own romantic life. She'd been engaged twice, both times to carefully vetted Emirati men from appropriate families. Both engagements ended when Amira couldn't commit, claiming the men didn't understand her or weren't ambitious enough. Friends suspected the real issue. No man could compete with her idealized relationship with her father. In Amira's psychological landscape, her father existed primarily in relation to her, as proud parent, business mentor, family patriarch who validated her identity. His grief after her mother's death was supposed to be temporary, something Amira could manage by being the perfect daughter. What she couldn't tolerate was the possibility of being replaced. When Khalid became withdrawn and secretive in late 2021, Amira initially attributed it to continued mourning. When he began declining family dinners and missing business meetings, she assumed depression. She arranged consultations with therapists, which Khalid canceled, organized family interventions, which he deflected with vague reassurances, and intensified her presence in his life. She never suspected romance. That possibility didn't fit her narrative framework. Her father was 56, grieving, and in her understanding, past the age of genuine passion. The truth remained hidden until August 2023, when Amira accidentally discovered evidence that shattered her worldview. Amira discovered her father's secret marriage in the worst possible way. By accident, through financial records she was reviewing for estate planning purposes. On August 21, 2023, 3 days after Khalid and Rosa's private Islamic marriage ceremony, Amira was reviewing family trust documentation as part of routine annual financial planning. She noticed an unusual transfer. $500,000 moved from Khalid's personal account to a newly created trust labeled RMD Trust. RMD, Rosa Marina Delgado. Amira initially assumed this was a charitable donation or business investment using someone's initials, but curiosity pushed her to investigate. Using her access to her father's financial accounts, access he'd granted her after her mother's death to help manage family finances, she traced the trust's beneficiary. The trail led to marriage documents filed with Dubai courts on August 18, 2023. Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid and Rosa Marina Delgado married under Islamic law in a private ceremony with only 2 witnesses, the legal minimum. Amira's reaction, according to her later testimony, was disbelief followed by betrayal followed by rage. She immediately called her brothers, Omar and Layla. They were equally shocked but less emotionally volatile. Omar suggested waiting to speak with their father calmly. Layla recommended family mediation. But Amira wasn't interested in calm conversations. Share this video if you've ever felt betrayed by a parent's choices, because what happened next shows how dangerous unprocessed emotions become. Amira's rage centered on several interconnected issues. Replacement of her mother. In Amira's mind, Rosa's existence dishonored Fatima's memory. 4 years after her mother's death felt too soon, too disrespectful, too painful. Social humiliation. News of Khalid marrying a foreign nurse would circulate through Dubai's elite circles within days. Amira imagined the gossip, the speculation about gold digging, the jokes about old men and young women. Financial threat. The $500,000 trust was just the beginning. Under UAE inheritance law, a wife receives specific marital portions that could reduce Amira's eventual inheritance by millions. More problematically, Rosa could influence Khalid's business decisions, charitable giving, and asset distribution. Loss of control. Amira had spent 4 years positioning herself as her father's primary relationship. Rosa's presence threatened that role completely. Racial and class prejudice. Though Amira would never admit this consciously, her contempt for Rosa was partially rooted in racism and classism. Filipino nurses occupied specific social positions in Dubai's hierarchy, essential workers, but never equals. The idea of a Filipina nurse becoming her stepmother violated Amira's sense of social order. For 3 days, Amira researched Rosa obsessively, finding her social media profiles, her employment records, her apartment address, her family background in Cebu. She hired a private investigator who provided detailed reports within 48 hours. She learned that Rosa was exactly who she appeared to be, a hardworking nurse from a modest background who'd built a respectable life through legitimate means. No scandals, no criminal history, no secret agendas. Just a woman who'd fallen in love with a wealthy widower. This ordinariness made Amira angrier. If Rosa had been obviously villainous, a scammer, a manipulator, a gold digger with a criminal past, Amira could have exposed her and ended things cleanly. But Rosa's legitimacy meant Khalid's feelings were genuine, which made the situation unfixable through exposure. Comment below, was Amira's rage understandable even if her actions weren't? Can we sympathize with her emotional crisis without excusing murder? On September 5, 2023, Amira confronted her father at his private office. The conversation, witnessed by Khalid's executive assistant, became heated. Amira demanded Khalid annul the marriage immediately. Khalid refused, stating he was entitled to personal happiness and Rosa made him happy. Amira threatened to cut off all contact. Khalid said he'd mourn that loss but wouldn't be controlled. The meeting ended with Amira screaming, "You're destroying everything Mother built. You're humiliating our entire family." Khalid responded quietly, "I'm living my life. You don't get to control that." 3 days later, Rosa was dead. On September 8, 2023, Amira al-Rashid murdered her stepmother with careful planning that belied her later claims of temporary insanity. The murder wasn't spontaneous, it was methodically arranged. Amira knew that her father and Rosa were celebrating their 3-week anniversary at the Burj Al Arab, staying in the royal suite for a long weekend. Khalid had mentioned it during their argument, perhaps hoping to normalize the marriage by discussing it openly. Amira used her family connections to obtain detailed information. The specific suite number 2504, the reservation dates September 7-10, and crucially, the timing when Khalid would be absent. She learned through his calendar, which she still had access to as his former assistant, that Khalid had a mandatory business meeting on September 8 from 2:00-5:00 p.m. at the Emirates Towers. That 3-hour window was all she needed. Subscribe if you're recognizing that wealth provides not just motive but means, because Amira's privilege enabled every aspect of this crime. The morning of September 8, Amira visited the Burj Al Arab under the pretense of inspecting the property for a client. Her real estate business provided perfect cover. She befriended a hotel staff member, claiming she needed to deliver a surprise gift to Suite 2504 for her father's anniversary. The staff member, recognizing Amira as Sheikh Khalid's daughter and seeing no reason for suspicion, provided a temporary keycard. Amira entered the royal suite at 2:47 p.m. Security footage captured this with perfect clarity. She was carrying a designer handbag containing a bottle of champagne, a sedative drug stolen from her father's medicine cabinet, prescribed after her mother's death but never used, and a pair of latex gloves. Rosa was alone, relaxing after a room service lunch, wearing casual clothes and apparently texting with family in the Philippines. She was surprised but not initially alarmed when Amira entered. She knew this was Khalid's daughter and assumed this was an awkward but perhaps conciliatory family visit. Amira's version of events, provided later during police interrogation, claimed the murder was unplanned, that she'd come to talk rationally, but lost control when Rosa refused to leave my father alone. But forensic evidence told a different story. The sedative in Rosa's system suggested Amira had drugged the champagne, likely crushing pills into the bottle before arrival. Rosa's toxicology report showed enough sedative to cause drowsiness and reduced resistance, but not unconsciousness. Amira had calculated this precisely. Enough drug to make Rosa compliant, not enough to be immediately obvious as poisoning. Rosa likely accepted a champagne toast, perhaps believing this was Amira's attempt at reconciliation. Within 20 minutes, the sedative took effect. Security footage shows Amira still in the suite, timing consistent with waiting for the drug to work. What happened next was brutal and intentional. Amira filled the suite's massive marble bathtub, helped a drowsy Rosa into the water, likely under the pretense of helping her rest, and then forcibly held her underwater until she drowned. The medical examiner's report was explicit. Victim exhibits defensive wounds on arms consistent with attempting to resist restraint, bruising on shoulders and back of head consistent with being forcibly held underwater. Manner of death, homicide by drowning. This is the hardest part to process, so hit that like button if you need a moment, because the premeditation here is chilling. Rosa Marina Delgado died slowly, horribly, conscious enough to know she was being murdered but too sedated to fight effectively. Her final moments were terror, confusion, and the burning agony of water filling her lungs, while someone she'd hoped to eventually have a family relationship with killed her deliberately. Amira staged the scene to look like an accidental drowning, a woman who'd had too much champagne and fallen asleep in the bathtub. But she made critical errors. She forgot to remove the latex gloves immediately, leaving microscopic fiber evidence on Rosa's body. She knocked over furniture during the struggle, creating inconsistencies with the peaceful accident narrative. Most damningly, she failed to erase security footage showing her entering with a bag and leaving with a different outfit, having changed clothes in the suite. Amira left the royal suite at 4:18 p.m., taking the drugged champagne bottle with her but leaving the gloves in a bathroom trash can, a catastrophic oversight. She returned to her office, attended an early evening business call as if nothing had happened, and went home to her Palm Jumeirah penthouse apartment, where she was arrested 11 hours later. Hotel staff discovered Rosa's body at 6:45 p.m. when Khalid returned from his business meeting and found his wife unresponsive in the bathtub. His anguished calls for help brought immediate medical response, but Rosa had been dead for hours. Dubai police responded with multiple units. Hotel deaths involving prominent families trigger intensive protocols. Lead investigator Lieutenant Marwan al-Hashimi immediately noted inconsistencies. The champagne flutes, the positioning of Rosa's body, the slightly off-center bathroom rug suggesting recent movement. The autopsy results confirmed suspicions. This wasn't an accidental drowning. The sedative in Rosa's system, the defensive wounds, and the force pattern bruising indicated homicide. Security footage provided the breakthrough. Cameras captured Amira entering with one bag, spending 91 minutes in the suite during the window when Rosa died, and leaving with a different outfit and fewer items than she'd entered with. Share this video if you believe security systems in luxury hotels exist for exactly this reason, to catch people who think wealth makes them untouchable. Police obtained a search warrant for Amira's apartment and office. They found the designer bag she'd carried into the hotel, containing residue matching the sedative found in Rosa's system. A partially crushed pill bottle of the same medication in Amira's bathroom. Computer search history from September 6-7 including how long does drowning take, sedatives that don't show immediately in autopsy, accidental death staging, and inheritance law when parent remarries. The searches proved premeditation beyond any doubt. Most damningly, police recovered Amira's phone, which contained text messages to a friend from September 7. My father has made a terrible mistake marrying this woman. If she thinks she's part of this family, she's deluded. Something has to be done before this goes further. Amira was arrested at 3:30 a.m. on September 9, 2023, at her Palm Jumeirah residence. According to arresting officers, she appeared unsurprised, almost relieved, as if she'd been expecting this outcome. During interrogation, Amira's statements wavered between justification and denial. I only wanted to talk to her, to make her understand she didn't belong. I never meant for it to go that far. She wouldn't listen. My father was being manipulated. I was protecting him. She was only with him for money. Everyone knows that. But the evidence was overwhelming. The premeditated drug preparation, the obtaining of hotel access under false pretenses, the careful timing around Khalid's absence, and the computer searches, all proved this was calculated murder, not a momentary loss of control. Comment below. Do you believe Amira's claims of protecting her father, or was this purely about control and inheritance? What's your read on her motivation? The trial of Amira al-Rashid began on January 15, 2024 in Dubai Criminal Court. Unlike many UAE cases involving prominent families, this proceeded with unusual transparency, largely because Sheikh Khalid himself demanded public accountability. In an extraordinary move, he testified against his own daughter, stating, I loved Rosa. My daughter took that from me. Justice must be served regardless of family name. The prosecution was led by Hamza al-Nasiri, a veteran prosecutor known for refusing to succumb to wealthy defendants' pressure. His case was straightforward. Premeditated murder proven by digital evidence, physical evidence, witness testimony, and Amira's own contradictory statements. Amira's defense team, 6 lawyers led by renowned British QC Margaret Thornton at $25,000 per day, pursued a temporary insanity triggered by complicated grief defense. They argued Amira was still processing her mother's death, that Rosa's sudden appearance in her father's life triggered a psychotic break, and that she couldn't form the mental intent required for first-degree murder. Subscribe if you're already predicting how this defense will fail, because even the best lawyers can't overcome video evidence and computer searches for how to stage accidental drowning. The prosecution methodically destroyed the temporary insanity defense. Evidence of planning. The computer searches occurred 2 days before the murder. Temporary insanity doesn't involve Google research sessions. Calculated drug dosage. Amira had precisely calculated sedative amounts, not enough to kill directly, just enough to reduce resistance. That's premeditation, not madness. Obtaining hotel access. She deliberately deceived hotel staff to gain entry. Mentally incompetent people don't execute sophisticated deceptions. Changing clothes and removing evidence. After the murder, Amira changed outfits and took the drugged champagne bottle with her. Those are consciousness of guilt behaviors incompatible with psychotic breaks. The defense's psychological experts testified that Amira suffered from complex grief disorder with paranoid features and enmeshed attachment patterns suggesting impaired judgment. The prosecution's experts countered that personality disorders don't negate criminal responsibility. Millions of people have complicated grief without committing murder. The most powerful testimony came from Sheikh Khalid himself, who appeared visibly aged, his grief transforming into a determined quest for justice. My daughter believes she was protecting me, but I didn't need protection. I needed freedom to live my life. Rosa made me happy. She was kind, intelligent, and genuine. My daughter took that from me out of selfish desire to control my life. That is not love, that is possession, and it cost an innocent woman her life. His words, delivered with quiet devastation, silenced the courtroom. Share this video if you believe Sheikh Khalid's testimony represents the kind of courage wealthy parents rarely demonstrate, choosing justice over protecting a guilty child. Rosa's family testified via video link from Cebu. Her mother, Corazon, sobbed as she described receiving the phone call that her daughter had died, the disbelief that her successful, careful Rosa could be gone. Her father, Ernesto, spoke about Rosa's dreams, to eventually bring her parents to Dubai, to build a life, to be happy after years of sacrifice. She finally found love, Ernesto said. After all those years working for everyone else, she found someone who valued her, and she was murdered for it, because she wasn't considered good enough to love. His statement gutted the courtroom, forcing everyone to confront the ugly truth beneath the family drama. Rosa had been deemed unworthy of love because of her nationality, her economic background, her social class. The trial lasted 7 weeks. On March 8, 2024, International Women's Day, appropriately, the 3-judge panel delivered their verdict. Guilty of first-degree, premeditated murder. The court explicitly rejected the temporary insanity defense, stating, "The defendant engaged in careful planning, obtained access through deception, brought sedative drugs to facilitate the crime, and attempted to stage the scene afterward. These behaviors demonstrate clear consciousness of wrongdoing and criminal intent." Sentencing would come 2 weeks later. On March 22, 2024, Amira Al-Rashid returned to Dubai Criminal Court for sentencing. Under UAE law, first-degree murder carries mandatory penalties. Death sentence, rarely applied, or life imprisonment, 25 years minimum. The prosecution requested life imprisonment. The defense argued for reduced sentencing based on Amira's psychological state, her lack of prior criminal history, and her contributions to Dubai's business community, an argument that essentially said her wealth and social status should mitigate consequences. Hit that like button if you're thinking what I'm thinking. Suggesting someone's business contributions should reduce their murder sentence is peak privilege. The judges deliberated for 3 hours before delivering their decision. Life imprisonment, 25 years with no possibility of parole. The sentencing statement read, "Rosa Marina Delgado came to the UAE to build a better life for herself and her family. She harmed no one. She fell in love and married legally. The defendant, motivated by possessiveness, prejudice, and refusal to accept her father's autonomy, took Rosa's life through calculated violence. This court will not reduce consequences based on the defendant's wealth or social position. All lives have equal value under law." Amira showed no visible reaction as the sentence was read. Her family, her brothers Omar and Layla, various cousins and relatives, sat in stunned silence. Only Sheikh Khalid was absent. He'd stated he couldn't bear to see his daughter sentenced but supported the verdict completely. Under UAE prison law, Amira will serve her sentence at Al Awir Women's Prison, where she'll have access to educational programs, limited family visitation, and standard imprisonment conditions. Nothing like the luxury she'd known, but far from the brutal conditions many inmates worldwide face. She'll be eligible for mandatory release in 2049, at age 53. She'll have spent half her adult life imprisoned for a murder motivated by inability to accept that her father belonged to himself, not to her. The impact of Rose's murder rippled far beyond the courtroom. For Sheikh Khalid, the patriarch who'd briefly found happiness now lives with compounded grief, mourning both his murdered wife and his imprisoned daughter. He established the Rosa Delgado Foundation in June 2024, providing scholarships for Filipino nursing students and supporting programs for overseas workers' families. The foundation's initial endowment, $10 million. In rare media interviews, Khalid speaks about the isolation of wealth, the ways privilege corrupts judgment, and his regret that he didn't protect Rosa by being more public about their relationship. "I thought discretion protected us, but secrecy made her vulnerable. If I had announced our marriage proudly, publicly, perhaps my daughter wouldn't have believed she could act with impunity." For Rosa's family, the Delgados received $2 million in compensation from Khalid, not court-ordered, but voluntarily provided as inadequate recognition of their loss. They used part to build a modest home in Cebu and part to establish a nursing scholarship fund in Rosa's name at Cebu Normal University. Corazon Delgado told journalists, "No amount of money returns my daughter, but we want Rosa's death to mean something. We want other Filipino women to be safe, to be valued, to be seen as human beings deserving of love and life." For the Filipino community in UAE, Rosa's murder became a rallying point for advocacy organizations demanding better protections for overseas workers, particularly regarding violence within employer or marital relationships. The Philippine government strengthened embassy protocols for supporting Filipinos in cross-cultural marriages and investigating suspicious deaths. For Omar and Layla al-Rashid, Amira's siblings have largely disappeared from public life, their social media accounts deleted, their business activities curtailed. Sources close to the family report they've relocated to London, distancing themselves from the scandal and the family name that has become synonymous with tragedy. For Dubai's elite community, the case forced uncomfortable conversations about classism, racism, and the treatment of foreign workers, conversations that Dubai's carefully curated image normally suppresses. Some wealthy families quietly ended relationships with Filipino partners, afraid of similar complications. Others became more public and protective, recognizing that secrecy creates vulnerability. Comment below, who suffered most in this tragedy: Rosa, who lost her life; Sheikh Khalid, who lost both wife and daughter, or the family systems that create these toxic dynamics? There's no right answer. Rosa Marina Delgado's legacy extends beyond her murder. Her case illuminated systemic issues that affect millions. The vulnerabilities of cross-cultural relationships within massive power imbalances. When one partner has billions and citizenship rights, while the other has modest savings and visa dependency, that relationship exists within inherently risky dynamics. The specific dangers Filipino women face in Gulf states. While many find safety and opportunity, others encounter violence, exploitation, and death. Rosa's case proved that even legally recognized marriages don't guarantee protection. The ways adult children weaponize family loyalty. Amira's possessive attachment to her father and refusal to accept his autonomy represented extreme behavior, but less violent versions happen daily in families worldwide. The persistence of classism and racism even in globalized contexts. Rosa was deemed unsuitable not because of character flaws, but because of her nationality and economic background, prejudices that proved literally deadly. The courage required to live authentically, Khalid and Rosa's relationship defied social expectations. They chose love over convenience. Rosa paid for that choice with her life, but the choice itself wasn't wrong. The violent response to it was. Subscribe and share if you believe Rosa's story needs to be told and retold. because forgetting these cases means condemning future victims to similar fates. Rosa's case fits a disturbing pattern of violence against Filipino women in intimate relationships with wealthy Gulf men. Between 2019-2024, Philippine Embassy records document 18 suspicious deaths of Filipino women married to or involved with Emirati men. Only 5 resulted in criminal investigations. Only 3 led to convictions. The common elements: significant wealth disparities, age gaps averaging 15-20 years, family opposition to the relationship, deaths classified initially as accidents or natural causes, inadequate initial investigations, diplomatic pressure required to force thorough inquiry. Rosa's case received intensive scrutiny partly because Sheikh Khalid himself demanded justice. But what about the Filipino women whose wealthy partners participate in cover-ups? What about the women whose families lack resources to push for investigations? Human rights organizations estimate that dozens of Filipino women die under suspicious circumstances in the Gulf states annually, with many deaths never properly investigated because victims lack powerful advocates. The royal suite at Burj Al Arab, where Rosa Marina Delgado spent her final hours, was closed for renovations immediately after the murder. It reopened in January 2024, completely redesigned, every surface replaced. The marble bathtub where she died was removed entirely. But wealth can't renovate away history. The suite remains rarely booked despite the $24,000 nightly rate. Hotel staff report unease about the space. Guests who have stayed there without knowing the history sometimes request room changes, citing undefined discomfort. Rosa's grave in Cebu City's Catholic cemetery is marked by a simple headstone engraved with her nursing credentials, her birth and death dates, and a quote she'd once posted on social media. "Work hard in silence, let success make the noise." She worked hard in silence. She achieved success by Filipino nursing standards. But the noise came not from success. It came from violence, from a family that refused to accept her worthiness, from a daughter who believed murder was preferable to sharing her father's affections. Sheikh Khalid visits Rosa's grave twice yearly, traveling to Cebu on her birthday, March 3, and the anniversary of her death, September 8. He sits alone for hours, speaking to the headstone in a private ritual of grief and apology. Amira al-Rashid will be 53 years old when released from prison in 2049, if she serves her full sentence. She'll emerge into a Dubai transformed by decades of change, her family name associated not with business success, but with murder, her prime years consumed by punishment for a crime motivated by toxic attachment and prejudice. The question that haunts everyone who followed this case: was this tragedy inevitable? Could intervention at some point, family therapy, honest conversations, confronting Amira's enmeshment patterns earlier, have prevented Rosa's death? Or are there some personality structures, some toxic combinations of wealth and entitlement and possessiveness, that inevitably explode into violence when challenged? Drop a final comment. What's your biggest takeaway from Rosa's story? What needs to change to prevent the next Rosa Marina Delgado from dying for choosing love? The truth is brutal. Rosa's death was preventable. It required only that Amira accept one fundamental principle: her father's life was his own, that his choices about love, marriage, and happiness weren't hers to control. But accepting that principle would have required Amira to see Rosa as fully human, as a woman with dreams, dignity, and equal right to love. And that recognition would have required dismantling prejudices about class, nationality, and worthiness that Dubai's social structures reinforce daily. Rosa Marina Delgado deserved to live. She deserved to be celebrated as Sheikh Khalid's wife, to build a life with him, to be welcomed rather than murdered. Her death stands as an indictment not just of one wealthy daughter's violence, but of the systems that taught her some lives matter more than others. Subscribe, share, and comment, because these conversations are how we honor Rosa's memory and protect future victims.